In late July, Canada's long-running lumber trade dispute with the United States entered another chapter. The U.S. Department of Commerce released its latest findings on Canadian softwood lumber, raising anti-dumping duty rates to levels as high as 35% for some producers with countervailing duties in the low to mid-teens. When combined, the total tariff burden for exporters rose above 30% for many firms, roughly doubling the average duties in place only a year earlier. Ahead of a meeting with Prime Minister Carney, President Trump notably declared that we don't need their lumber, signaling a continued hardline stance on Canadian exports. Officials in Washington said the decision reflected unfair subsidies in Canada's stumpage system and below-market pricing that allowed Canadian mills to undercut U.S. producers. In Canada's stumpage system and below-market pricing that allowed Canadian mills to undercut U.S. producers. The dispute has been recurring for decades, and each review by the Commerce Department resets the rates, creating uncertainty for mills on both sides of the border. This time, the increases were steep enough to immediately affect markets. On U.S. exchanges, lumber futures climbed to nearly $700 per thousand board feet in early August, the highest price in 3 years. Builders and contractors worried about higher costs at a time when the U.S. housing market was already strained by elevated mortgage rates and land prices. American producers welcomed the additional protection, while Canadian exporters warned of reduced competitiveness and job losses. The Canadian government quickly responded. Prime Minister Mark Carney's administration announced a support package of up to $1.15 billion Canadian dollars, with $700 million in loan guarantees to help mills weather the impact, and $500 million earmarked for innovation and market diversification. Ottawa also emphasized that Canada would continue to pursue a negotiated settlement with the United States, but stressed the importance of finding new customers abroad. That focus on diversification was not new. Canada has been pursuing it for several years through its export diversification strategy, which aimed to increase overseas exports by 50% by 2025. The country has signed or implemented 15 free trade agreements covering 49 countries, including large partners such as the European Union, the United Kingdom, and Japan. Talks are underway with the Mercosur bloc in South America and with the 10-member Association of Southeast Asian Nations. The trade data show some movement in this direction. Between May of 2024 and May of 2025, the share of Canadian exports going to the United States fell from 78% to 68%. Exports to other markets rose by more than 40% in value terms, adding roughly $5.75 billion. At the same time, exports to the U.S. declined by about $7.75 billion. For softwood lumber, the shift has been gradual but noticeable. According to monthly permit data, Canada shipped just over 1 billion board feet of lumber to the United States in March of 2025. By June, that figure had dropped to around 900 million, a decline of more than 10%. The U.S. remained by far the largest customer, accounting for more than 600 million Canadian dollars worth of sawnwood in June. But smaller markets were registering. Japan purchased about $40 million, China $37 million, the Philippines close to $9 million, and Taiwan about $7 million. British Columbia, Canada's largest lumber exporting province, has been especially affected. Premier David I commented in late August that British Columbians were feeling the impact of U.S. tariffs on both softwood and aluminum. While noting that a fair agreement with the United States would be welcome, he emphasized the need to concentrate on moving to other markets who want our products and on continuing to grow our economy and deliver more family-supporting jobs. The trend toward diversification is not limited to lumber. In energy, Canada shipped its first liquefied natural gas cargo from the Pacific Coast in June of 2025. That project, long delayed, created an export outlet to Asia and attracted interest from European buyers such as Germany. Crude oil shipments via the expanded Trans Mountain Pipeline have also shifted patterns. China became the largest overseas buyer in 2025, averaging more than 200,000 barrels per day, compared with only 7,000 a year earlier. South Korea, India, and Taiwan have also increased imports. Other sectors are seeing similar moves. Gold exports to the United Kingdom surged by more than 400% in the 12 months through mid-2025. Agricultural products including canola, beef, and pulses have expanded sales to Asia and the Middle East. Critical minerals have drawn investment from Japan, South Korea, and European Union partners, all seeking to diversify supply chains away from China. For the United States, the new duties may provide short-term relief for domestic producers, but they also raise costs for American builders and consumers, and they push Canadian exporters to accelerate their search for alternative markets. For Canada, the near-term challenge is real. Mills face reduced access to their largest buyer, and some have announced plans to curtail production or shift operations south of the border. Yet the longer-term effect may be to reduce reliance on the U.S. market, which has historically absorbed close to 4/5 of Canadian exports. Trade economists often note that diversification is easier to discuss than to achieve. Geography, transportation costs, and existing supply chains all reinforce the north-south orientation of Canadian trade. Still, the evidence of the past year shows that changes are happening. The U.S. share of Canadian exports is declining and Asia's share is growing. Even small increases in places like Japan, China, and the Philippines indicate that Canadian lumber is finding customers elsewhere. The broader lesson is that trade policy can have unintended consequences. Tariffs are designed to protect, but they can also redirect, by making it more difficult for Canadian lumber to reach the United States. The duties have encouraged exporters to build relationships in other regions. Those relationships may take time to grow, but once established, they create new pathways that can endure beyond the current dispute. Canada's softwood lumber industry therefore faces a dual reality. In the short term, duties cut into profits, strain mill towns, and test provincial and federal support systems. In the longer term, the industry is slowly adjusting its orientation, adding resilience by cultivating new markets in Asia and beyond. Whether this adjustment ultimately reduces Canada's dependence on the United States remains to be seen, but the early data suggests that the process is underway. That's all for this video. Thank you for watching. As an independent channel, we don't have corporate backing. We rely on your support to keep going. If you found this video valuable, please give it a thumbs up and leave a comment below. It really helps more people find our work. Thank you so much for being part of our community. Check out the next video on your screen. We picked it just for you.